These are not rival cars. The Dacia Duster is a budget, petrol-powered rugged estate starting from under £17,000. The Mercedes EQB is a premium, pure electric SUV starting from under £54,000. Nobody is going to be looking at a Mercedes EQB and then decide to settle for a jogger, or vice versa.
But there is a point to having these two together because they're both compact 7-seat family cars. And that is a class of car that's weirdly underrepresented. There just aren't many options if you want occasional use of 7 seats, but you don't want a car that's big enough to have its own gravitational forces. It's really only these two, and I will give honourable mentions to the Land Rover Discovery Sport and also to the Volkswagen Touran. But these really are the only other options apart from the sort of van-like cars that Peugeot and Citroën offer, which are really practical, it has to be said. But if you don't want a van and you don't want a massive car, well, this is the sort of car that you're looking at. These two really do bookend your options if you are looking for a compact 7-seater. Now, the Dacia Jogger, this is a new car. It's got turbocharged 1-litre petrol engine. As we've already said, it's fantastic value for money. It's actually based on the Renault Clio platform, so you're talking about front-wheel drive. It's a pretty basic thing, but for the money, you're going to expect it to be. The Mercedes EQB, on the other hand, well, this, of course, is a pure electric version of the Mercedes GLB. So you're getting a range of 257 miles. In this top-spec 350 version, you're getting 288 brake horsepower and 4-wheel drive. So it really is completely the other end of the spectrum from the Dacia. Now, before we go any further, I want to make an important point. These rearmost seats, they're not meant for adults in these compact 7-seaters. If you are a 6-foot-something bloke who reviews cars, as many of my friends and peers are, don't concertina yourself into the back here and then moan that it's not big enough. It's not meant for you. You're the one that's too big. The seat's just fine, all right? And I have to say, that is very much the case for the Jogger, because these seats, actually, they're not bad, you know. They're a bit wider than I would have imagined, and they're surprisingly well cushioned. They're okay. There's not much foot space. You always get that with the raised floor, but you know, it's okay. I would add, if you genuinely want to get 7 people in the Jogger, you're going to have to use this seat belt for the middle person in the row. So you're going to have somebody sat here where I am, and then you're going to have this seat belt right in front of their face, which isn't so ideal. But nonetheless, there's no getting away from the fact that this is not bad at all in terms of the space and comfort for occasional rear seats.
When the seats are simply folded down in the Jogger, there's not much boot space left. The seats are really quite intrusive and also reveal all sorts of cheap material and finishing. But take them out altogether and there is a huge boot space that's verging on van-like.
As for access in the Jogger, do you know what? Again, that's not too bad. So, yes, these seats look really cheap the way they're finished, but who really cares? Because it makes perfect sense. They all just flip forward and then you've got this really big access space here to get out and get in. So yeah, you do need to be quite dexterous, but like I said, it's not for adults, it's for the kids back there, so that's fine, isn't it?
There's actually a bit more legroom in the middle row of the EQB than there is in the Jogger, not to mention masses of headroom, and the seats slide as well. Isofix car seats will be easy to fit, but the seats in the EQB are a little narrow, so chunky car seats that use a seatbelt fitting can be difficult to click in. It's always worth checking that your car seats fit in any car that you're considering.
As for getting in to those occasional seats in the back of the Mercedes, it is not as easy as it is in the Jogger. So yes, the seat slides forward and tilts very nicely, and then you can put it back like this. And actually, when you're in here, it's not so bad. So the seats are a bit narrow, but you get 2 cup holders back here, you get a little shelf, you even get USB-C charging, so there's definitely a little bit more comfort back here than there is in the Jogger in that respect. And I would say you do have to sacrifice the legroom in the middle row a little bit to make sure that you can get an adult back here if that's what you're trying to do. Like I've said, if you get the kids back here, which is what's really going to happen in these cars, they're going to be absolutely fine, and it's really not bad back here at all. When it comes to the boot in the EQB, well, let's face it, even with these seats folded, it doesn't have quite as big a load space as the Dacia Jogger if you actually physically remove those rearmost seats from the Dacia. But there are benefits to the Mercedes, because if you fold these seats, which is really easy, just like that, then you get a nice flat load bay, and you're not having to store those occasional seats in the garage or the porch or whatever, which is a great bonus. What I would say, there is one frustration. You get a little bit of storage space under here for all your gubbins, your handbook and your warning triangle and all of that. But it is frustrating because there is a load bay cover, which I have here. So of course, Normally when it's in 5-seat mode, you'd have that in and you'd use it to cover up what you've given in the boot. But if you take it out to use the 7 seats, there's nowhere to store it in the boot. It doesn't fit in the back here, which is kind of annoying because it feels like there really should be somewhere that you could put it. But there isn't, so that's annoying. However, I will forgive it because at least once you've got those rear seats down and you've got your nice flat load bay, then they give you a carpet even to make it look all nice and tidy. You do have cables as well. So these come as standard, and unfortunately there is no storage space in the nose of the EQB, so you are going to have these rattling around in the boot. The boot space in the EQB is not as big as that in the Dacia Jogger if you take those seats out and store them out of the Dacia. But I think this is kind of a neater solution for a lot of families, and it's still by any stretch a big enough boot. You're going to get your big double buggy in there, or dog, whatever. It's a really, really good family car.
Neither of these is the prettiest car, I'll give you that. I don't mind either, to be honest, but the EQB looks rather droopy and sad from the back, and the Jogger's, well, just forgettable, although I do like how it reminds me of Volvo estates from the 90s. Up front, the Mercedes EQB lives up to all the high-class, rose gold tinted expectations that you're likely to have of a Mercedes. The steering wheel and its touchpad controls is lovely to look at and to use, the dash is also very user-friendly, and the materials feel and look lovely. It's one of the nicest interiors in the class, and it's also one of the best infotainment systems. Better than Audi's for usability, it's got sharp graphics, a touchscreen that's quick to respond, and a touchpad control as well, even if the touchpad isn't quite as intuitive as the rotary control you get in BMWs. The Dacia costs a third of what the Mercedes does, so you're not going to quibble over some very plasticky finishes, but you're also not going to forget that this is a bit of a budget car given the basic look and feel. Even so, I rather like the unpretentious durability of the Jogger, and the 8-inch touchscreen that's standard from mid-spec comfort trim has most of the features that you need. However, you will have to rely on CarPlay or Android Auto for sat-nav.
So you may have seen that we drove the EQB in a pre-production form earlier this year on the CarGurus UK YouTube channel. So you can check that review out as well if you want. This is a full UK production car. It's top spec, it's on 20-inch wheels, it's on Pirelli P0 tyres if you want to know. The ride comfort, it's a little bit brittle at lower speeds as we are now, and if you get kind of lots of expansion joints then it picks them up a bit. Other than that, actually generally I think the ride's pretty good. There's a bit of body lean, but this isn't a car that's about being fun. It's not a car that's intended to be, you know, kind of an enthusiast's car, like for instance the Jaguar I-Pace, which, let's face it, isn't that much more expensive than the EQB and handles way, way better. It's much more of a sort of sports SUV. This is just about being quiet, comfy, chilled, good family car. The steering's quite light. You can weight it up with the drive modes down here. You can stick it in sport. Like I said, even do that. It's not a sporty car. It's just nice to drive, and it's very confident. It's got loads of grip. If you do go too fast into a corner, it just understeers, and then you can just pull it back in, lift off the throttle. Everything is exactly as you expect it to be. There is a bit of a funny thing going on with the brake feel, so it's fine normally, but if you go into a harder stop, there's a funny change in response further down the brake pedal travel, where it changes from the brake regen, which you can control with these paddles, so you can have an auto mode or you can select the fixed brake regen modes through there, which I like. I think it gives you more control, so that all works really well. But like I said, the brake pedal itself, it does change response suddenly, kind of quite deep into the brake travel, which can be a bit disconcerting. So all in, I think the EQB is exactly what it needs to be. This is the 350, as I've said. It's got 288 brake. It'll do 0 to 62 in 6 seconds. It's just unnecessary. You don't need it to be that quick. So honestly, I'd go for the 300 and save a bit of money. To be honest, probably even more sensible would be to wait for the front wheel drive one, which is going to be cheaper still. And then I think you're going to be looking at a car that really is, you know, potentially excellent value for money in the context of premium compact 7-seaters. It's going to be a lot of car for the cash, that one.
As for the EV specific stuff, the EQB charges via a Type 2 or CCS socket, which are compatible with almost all public charging stations in the UK or West Europe. Plug in at a standard 7 kilowatt home wall box and you will fully charge the 66.5 kilowatt hour usable battery in under 11 hours, while a 150 kilowatt ultra rapid charger, of the sort that you typically find on the motorway, will deliver an additional 100 miles of range in some 20 minutes. As for real world range, we would expect to see something like 170 miles in colder weather and up to 240 miles in the summer.
So from the reassuringly expensive to the remarkably cheap, the Dacia Jogger is Well, you'd be unsurprised to know that it does feel, in many ways, a bit cheap in the way it drives too. And you know what? The engine is pretty good, but it's the ride that really kind of gives away a little bit of the cost savings. It's the ride and the refinement. So this road in particular, so you get lots of expansion joints. It's not a great surface, so at low speeds you can really feel the wheels kind of rebounding around in the wheel arches. So this car is on 16-inch alloys, and do you know what, most of the time it rides pretty well on, you know, typical roads, especially at higher speeds it settles down quite nicely. But it's that sort of constant fidget that you get, and I think the more intrusive thing is actually the refinement, because you can really hear the suspension working, and it's quite boomy and it kind of reverberates around the cabin, and it's that particular pitch of noise that kind of bothers your ears. So I find that quite annoying around town and that kind of thing. I think that's the thing that really lets it down in terms of making it feel a bit cheap. Other than that, steering's light. Yeah, it's a bit, you know, vague, the front end on this car, but it does exactly what you want it to do. It's got enough grip. The pedal responses, well, you know, it's all a bit vague again. Quite a high, slightly vague clutch biting point. So it's quite easy to kind of encourage you to over rev the engine. But the engine itself picks up quite nicely. You have to work it hard to get decent performance. This thing's got like a 0 to 60 to about 11 seconds, 108 brake horsepower. It just does what you want it to. It is exceptionally fit for purpose, and nothing more and nothing less.
It has to be mentioned that the Dacia Jogger gets only 1 star in Euro NCAP crash tests. While this is hardly good news, it is worth pointing out that the severe rating is primarily due to a shortage of driver aids, such as pedestrian sensing autonomous emergency brake assist. Adult occupant protection actually gets 4 stars, while child occupant protection gets 3.
The Dacia Jogger, if you can live with a car that's called the Jogger, frankly, it's pretty fantastic value for money. As for the EQB, yes, I think waiting for the cheaper front-wheel drive one could make a lot of sense, because the way it drives isn't really what that car's about. Its USP is still the fact that it's a pure electric car that's got 7 seats, but it does that exceptionally well. It's got the range, it's got the looks, it's got really nice sort of driving characteristics. It's a fantastic premium family car with those occasional 7 seats to set it apart from its rivals. So there you have it. They're both really, really good.
These are 2 of our favourite of the breed. There are flaws in both. Even so, if you're after something like this, clearly your budget will dictate whether you're debating whether to fork out £850 for rose gold paint on your £55,000 Mercedes, or whether you're going to pay £1,000 extra to get a touchscreen and keyless entry. Whichever end of the scale you're at, the good news is that you're getting a really excellent 7-seater that isn't obnoxiously huge and yet is brilliantly practical. What's not to like? Head to cargurus.co.uk for a whole host of fantastic used cars, and of course don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the CarGurus UK YouTube channel and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any of our videos.